Hey folks, Kilo Echo Zero Victor India Mike. Mike is the handle, and this is the second video in a series called So You Want to Activate POTA. And on this video, we're going to focus on researching the parks that you're going to activate. Let's go.
This is the special activation. That's a great wolf.
That's awful close.
Parks on the air.
Hey everybody, we're in the 8-ton radio go box today. We're parked, you can see behind me, in Pike National Forest in Park County, Colorado, just outside of South Park actually. Yeah, so while I'm going through doing this activation, figured I'd record the research video. So after understanding all the rules and procedures for parks on the air, the next thing to do is to find a park to activate. So the Parks on the Air app website does have a pretty good resource in its map. It does have some limitations though, and it's important that you understand those. They mark all the parks with little yellow dots. Okay, and some of these parks are really big. Some of these parks are very linear, like a trail. And just putting a dot somewhere maybe isn't as descriptive as it could be. It'd be great if they had polygons for everything on their map, but it's a volunteer program, so I try to cut them quite a bit of slack. So the first thing that you could simply do is hop on there, let the map locate according to your current location and see what parks are around you. But you know, you may want to do a little outside research too, because there may be other state or national park entities in your area. And if they're quite large, that dot could be 100 miles away from you. I mean, there's trails that go through 5 or 6 states, and who knows where that dot is. You know, it's not going to do you any good at all. And there are national forests that, like this Pike National Forest, has pieces and parts all over the place. I think the dot for this is actually like 30 miles to my south. So just understand that's a limitation to the system. It is a good way to get started, but you're gonna wanna kind of know what's in your area. If there's national parks, if there's state parks, if there's wildlife areas, you know, what kinds of entities in your state tend to be the park entities. And it varies from state to state. Some states are all wildlife areas. There was one, I think it was Idaho, was all airports. I found that really bizarre, but a lot of the little dots in Idaho were airports. So if you had one near you in Idaho, then that's something you want to check out. Now, if you don't see the dot for an entity that you know that's near you, you can also search by name for the park on the website. So on all the little pages, there's usually a little search box. I can type in the park that I'm in here, Kilo-4404, and it'll bring up the page. It'll bring up all the statistics for it. I could also, if I wanted just to see if Pike National Forest is in the system, I can just search for Pike National Forest. So that's another way you can search and see if there's an entity is in the POTA program also. Now remember, it's going to be state and federal parks. There are also lists for all of the entities on a state-by-state basis. So you can search for your park that way as well. Yeah, so if you go to, if you're on the POTA.app page, there's the little hamburger menu button. You click on that, there's a selection for a park list. And when you get to park list, you can go down to United States, and under United States, it has it broken out into states. So I'm in Colorado. I could click on Colorado and it's gonna pull up all of the POTA entities within the state. So I'll reiterate within this video, if you do find that a park in your area is not in the system, what you will want to do, again, assuming it's either a state or a federal entity, is submit that to your mapping representative in your state. And you can find their names and emails per state on parksontheair.com. Just remember to keep the expectation limited to the fact that it's probably not going to be added for quite some time. If you're in the United States, There's going to be a moratorium on parks, and they're not entering anything new for a while. I just put one in the other day for a park that has, it was actually for a trail that has now become a National Historic Trail. It is not in the POTA system. I think we might be able to get it added to the POTA system in this case because it is now a brand new entity. We'll see. But keep your expectations in check. Go ahead and submit. You'll probably get a nice, polite reply from your mapping representative saying, I received your request, but we're not adding anything new at this time. Okay, so once you've found the park that you want to activate, the next step is to identify the boundaries of that park. And this can be kind of the trickiest step. Now, one thing that Parks on the Air does to help you out, in a lot of instances, if you look up the entity on POTA.app, so I'm looking at Pike National Forest right now, it'll have a link, a website link to the entity that governs your park. So in this case, it is a link to the Forest Service page. I like to find the boundaries from the entity that manages the park. So if I'm going to be looking for a map for a national forest, I'm going to want to get it from the National Forest website. I'm not going to look at polygons on Google. I'm not going to look at polygons on the POTA map. I'm not doing any of that. I'm going right to the source so I know exactly where those boundaries are. And there can be exceptions within those boundaries. So of a national forest is a good example. There can be private land. There will be private land within the boundaries of the national forest. So you need to kind of know where those are at. They tend to be signed out in the field, but double check yourself with your online research to know exactly where those boundaries are. The next step, the third step, once we've found our park, we know where its boundaries are. We know where we need to be inside the boundary. The next one is access. Can we actually get in there? Now, this is going to be more of a problem than you think sometimes. There will be some parks that, especially if you find one that's never been activated, sometimes the reason it's never been activated is because there's no way to drive into the park. You have to hike in it somehow. And sometimes they're not real accessible. There was an instance in Maine where I showed up to a park and I thought I could just drive right on. And when I got there, there were no trespassing signs all over the place. Private, no trespassing, right to pass subject to owner's permission. Report emergency or problem. Huh, well, that sucks. How am I gonna get there now? So I was gonna have to get permission from whoever manages that park to be able to go in there and activate. And I was just passing through the area. I wasn't going to take the time to research that and get that going, so I just didn't activate it. But access can be an issue. So that's something that, generally looking on Google Maps, and in particular, I use the satellite images on Google Maps. That's going to tell us quite a bit. And that leads us into selecting an activation location. And sometimes I just do that on site. When I drive in, I find a place to operate. When we're visiting some of these larger national parks, one of the first things our family does when we visit a park is we go drive all around the park. We kind of scout out everything and go to the visitor centers and get all the information and decide the places that we want to visit as a family. And I'm scoping out places for activation locations at the same time. So I'll kind of do it that way. You can also do that on Google Maps. The POTA map comes back into play here. I think one of the best things about the map on the POTA app are the contours that show on there. So you can see quite a bit of the terrain, which can really hide on a satellite image, like a Google Maps satellite image. So having those contour lines on there, especially when you're out west, like here in Colorado, you may not know whether a park is in a valley or on a ridge, and that's going to change how you approach it, or maybe change even if you want to activate it. So that's definitely a tool to use there. That's one really great thing about the POTA map. Okay, so once you got that all figured out, you're pretty much there. Now it's just a matter of knowing what rules exist within the park. So a couple things to discuss here. There will be places that you'll find that won't want you hanging things in trees, and they won't want you stabbing anything in the ground, using any stakes or anything like that to hold up a mast. So that's always something to look for. If I'm in an area that I think might be sensitive in that regard, a vertical on a tripod or mag mounted on my truck always works really well. The other thing to discuss in that regard is this whole notion of, should we call and ask for permission to operate within a park? So there's two schools of thought. Do you ask for permission or do you ask for forgiveness? And I personally am in the school of asking for forgiveness. I think when we ask for permission to operate a ham radio station, what people picture in their minds, what a ranger is going to picture in their minds, I think is a lot bigger and a lot more extravagant than what we actually do. I think if they come actually see us activating in a park and we're just sitting at a park bench with our little FT891 and a little antenna on a mast off in the distance, it's not going to look like anything that's that big a deal. And that's that moment, if anything comes up, you could always ask for forgiveness. I think when we go and ask for permission, it just always, I think what they picture in their mind is bigger than what we actually do. I don't know if they think of like a news van or something like that, or they might think, I've had people think I'm actually like operating like an FM radio station. I'm going to be playing music and stuff. The first national park I ever tried to activate, I made the mistake of asking for permission. And it was this really nice ranger that was helping us with all this information. And the moment I asked about operating ham radio, her whole attitude changed. And she looked at me like lobsters were crawling out of my ears and was like, no, we can't allow that. And I knew she had no idea why. She didn't want to go any farther into it. I asked if there was a manager I could talk to. She said, yeah, but he'll say no too. I asked, well, does he have a phone number or an email address that I could try contacting him? No, it was a total closed door. I haven't asked for permission since. I did activate that park. I found a little, that was at Carlsbad Caverns. And it turns out there's some weird little out parcel. That whole park sits up on a cliff in southern New Mexico. And down below the cliff, there's this weird little picnic area that's actually part of Carlsbad Caverns National Park. And I went and activated down there. No big deal. Now, if you do choose to be the type to say, I'm going to ask for forgiveness rather than permission, I think then that your approach should be in as out of the way spot as possible. If I'm pulling over in a national park at any point of interest, wherever most people are going to be parking, if whatever they're viewing is down at this end, I'm going to park way down at this end. I'm going to be as out of the way as possible. I am way down at the far end of the parking area. Now, it would be a lot more convenient, and the shot would be a little better for me if I parked down at the other end right here. I'd be closer to the teepees. I get a little better shot there, but that's the prime parking spot. That's where everyone touring the park is going to want to be. When I'm trying to have a small footprint, I want to have the nice view, but I want to be a little bit out of the way too. So if it all fills up, then so be it. But I don't want to be down there in the way of every single person that's going to come here and want to take pictures or get out and look at this spot. I think that helps with the strategy of asking for forgiveness. If I'm at the Grand Canyon, I don't want to be right out there where people are going to be standing at the platforms and overlooking the canyon. And I'm set up right in the middle of that. CQ, parks on the air. I don't want to do that. In fact, I have done that at a spot like that, way out on a point where people go out and view. I was way as far away from that as I could be in the parking lot. I was parked right next to the dumpster and went off to the side over here where there wasn't a walk or anything and sat at the edge of the canyon and activated. Everyone else went way down to where the developed viewpoint was. So if you decide to take that strategy to ask for forgiveness as opposed to permission, then stay out of the way. You know, you may have a different opinion. That's okay. If you're going to be operating in the same park all the time and seeing the same people all the time, eventually they're going to get to know who you are and what you're doing. How do you start that off? Do you ask for permission or do you ask for forgiveness? That's up to you. And you know, I just think we should always be polite. We should always consider ourselves ambassadors to the hobby. And if a ranger tells me I need to leave, I'm going to say, okay, if you want me gone, I'll leave. And I'll try to explain what it is that we're doing and why I think it's not a big deal. But ultimately, if they want me to leave, I'll leave. Something else I'll look at when I'm researching a park is I will look at the activation statistics. I'll look and see how many total QSOs there have been in a park. I see here for Pike National Forest, there's almost 23,000 QSOs reported here. So this is not going to be a rare park. We'll get a decent amount of people where it's a new park for them, but you know, I'm not going to get mobbed because it's a rare park. I'll look at the QSO leaderboard, and I see just to get on the leaderboard, I'm going to have to get 1,500 QSOs. I'm not going to do that. So, you know, I don't have to really worry about that. But I just like knowing these things going in. If I look at the total QSO numbers and it only has 100 or 200, I know whenever I activate it, I'm going to get mobbed because people are interested in getting new parks. I will also, if I have a chance to get my name up on the leaderboard, particularly of a famous park, I'm going to try to do that. So that's sort of an optional thing, but something I like to look at. That's something that motivates me and gets me out to activate more often. All right, so I think that's it for researching parks for your first activation. We're going to do, the next video is going to be on the setup for your station. You know, if any time you have any questions about doing your first activation, use the comment section of these videos to ask your questions. It'll be a safe zone, no dumb question kind of zone here, and we'll get those answered for you. So maybe it'll be, hopefully it better be a friendlier environment than going on to a Facebook or Twitter or one of those places and, you know, asking a very basic question that's already been asked 100 times. You get asked 2 or 3 times a week, you know, and people get kind of tired of that. And if you have a basic question, you might look through the comments real quick if there's a bunch there and see if it's been asked already. This is Kilo Echo Zero Victor India Mike. Hopefully we're getting you close to activating your first park. 7-3.